And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, CENTCOM just putting out the word that the U.S. has launched fresh strikes on Iran, said to be the powerful response after the strikes that Iran took on U.S. facilities, including one with U.S. troops in Jordan. We'll keep you posted as soon as we get more details on this. But again, the U.S. military launching fresh strikes against Iran. And it comes after President Trump said at the Oval Office just a little bit ago that they will hit Iran very hard. He said, we're going to beat the blank out of them, and we'll try to see what kind of details we get on that. Lots of news happening here on the Rita Cosby Show. And also Mayor Zohran Mamdani trying to justify why he sent out all those letters to all of a whole bunch of New Yorkers, including a lot of them that didn't sound like they should be getting them, period, saying you have a second home and you better pay up or else. Because many New Yorkers are saying, why should I stick around the Big Apple when you have somebody who is a democratic socialist who's acting more like a communist? Well, here is Mayor Mamdani in the press conference just a little bit ago trying to justify this craziness, the second home tax that is going to create the massive exodus from New York City. Take a listen.
I think we're always going to do everything that we can to ensure that we're communicating clearly to New Yorkers. And I think that what we've found thus far is when it comes to these letters being sent out, it is anyone that the city believes may be subject to this surcharge. And now the work will begin to ensure that if someone has registered their property in a trust or they registered their property in an LLC and they are in fact the primary residence holder there, that is something that is communicated with the city. We've put the investment in, we're putting in the time now.
No apologies. Yeah, this just matter of fact. Right, we'll just put tens of thousands of people's names and addresses and information out there, and best of luck to you all. See ya. That was essentially the attitude from Zohran Mamdani. Also, he was asked why on the Judicial Advisory Board that appoints judges and a whole bunch else, why are there no Jewish lawyers involved? There's a lot of Jewish lawyers in New York, but what a coincidence. None of them happen to be on Zohran Mamdani's advisory board. Listen to this.
In my 6 months of being the mayor, I've had the privilege of appointing a dozen qualified judges from a range of backgrounds, including Jewish judges. And I want to be clear that any suggestion that the composition of the advisory committee was motivated by religion is false. And when it comes to, in that same letter, there was a point around Mr. Leventhal and his appointment as to why it was not considered. I want to be very clear that we decided not to move forward with his appointment because of the fact that he served on Ghislaine Maxwell's legal defense team and collected legal fees as such. And as much as possible, we thought it best to avoid any association between the committee that would be appointing judges and the Epstein world, especially given how much of a loss of faith it has created for many New Yorkers and Americans generally in our legal and our political system. I did not ask for the religion of each of the person that was put forward. As you know, as the mayor and our administration, we put forward about half of those nominees. The other half were put forward by other entities. And the thing that matters most to me is that in the judges that have been appointed and reappointed, that they do reflect that diversity of New York City, and that diversity includes Jewish New Yorkers, and we've seen that with the appointments thus far. I think the suggestion that there would be any decision-making motivated by religion, it does bother me. This is a city that is beautiful because of the breadth of diversity of those who call it home, and that includes the Jewish community across the 5 boroughs. And when it comes to the proposal of a lawyer being someone that would be on that committee, when we find out that they served on Ghislaine Maxwell's legal defense team, that was a moment of concern. I think, as I've said, in these 6 months, I've had the opportunity to appoint and reappoint about a dozen judges. In those appointments and reappointments, there have been Jewish judges that have been appointed and reappointed, and that will continue because of a mere fact that that is a reflection of what the city looks like.
And right, he's making Jewish New Yorkers feel so welcome. So he's explaining this one guy why he wasn't there, but why are there not others? I mean, there's a lot of serious questions here tonight, especially when it comes to Zohran Mamdani. And we'll get to the reaction from 9/11 families because they're really frustrated. There are tens of thousands of them tonight speaking out, saying they're really, really disgusted. They have a lot of signatures, by the way, on their petition. And President Trump even made some comments about that. We'll talk about that also later here on the show. Meantime, everybody talking about Dr. Fauci, who was under oath today before Congress. And before we get to today, which was just, I think, just such a disgrace for Dr. Fauci, saying, I take the fifth, I invoke the fifth, 111 times, 111 times, after he got a full pardon from Joe Biden, which extended for 11 years from 2014 to January 19th of 2025. So there should be no reason why he cannot testify under oath, especially in a congressional federal procedure. And Rand Paul asked him to testify, then he wouldn't, then he had to subpoena him. And now it looks like the Senate is going to hold him in contempt, at least a vote for it, next week. And they should absolutely hold him in contempt. How dare he, after everything that happened to America and happened to the globe? And this guy was supposed to be the source of information. And now what we're seeing in his own private diary, which was released by Rand Paul, boy, does it show a different face of Dr. Fauci. I mean, we always knew he was flipping and flopping, but if you listen and you read his own diary and the information, these are his own words in that diary, he basically knows it's not started in a wet lab. He basically knows that school shouldn't necessarily be closed. Natural immunity. There's a lot of topics in there, and yet none of that was made public. And that to me is really, really shocking. But let's go back, because here is Dr. Fauci in 2022. And this is when he was there at the White House. And he's like, I would be more than happy to testify, to give any information. I have nothing to hide. And then again, he gets the full pardon. It may have been by the old auto pen. So he gets the full pardon of 11 years, a preemptive pardon. That's breathtaking. Anything you did during that time as a official of the government, i.e. tied to health, tied to COVID, all of that. So all he had to do was testify today truthfully, because if he lied, then it would be considered a new crime. And remember, the time on the pardon is run out. But today he couldn't even say a word. He did his little statement, and then anytime it came for questions, they would ask him 6 ways to Sunday, and he would not reply. He just gave the canned, I'm invoking the fifth. But first of all, here he is back in 2022 saying he'd be more than happy if he's ever asked to go before Congress. Sign him up. He will speak fully and freely. Listen.
Well, if I become a punching bag, I'm a punching bag, but I am very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee. I have nothing to hide. I can explain and validate everything that I've done. So, it's going to be inconvenient if they actually are out there essentially threatening to make my life miserable. But I'm going to do what I need to do, and that is cooperate fully, because we have nothing to hide at all.
So he has nothing to hide at all. So then he gets an extraordinary full pardon for that 11-year period. Remember, for anything tied to official capacities. And what happens? He comes before Congress today, and listen to this with Josh Hawley, who was one of the senators at that Senate committee. Take a listen.
So I just want to be clear. I went to Minneapolis at the height of Project Metro Surge. I watched as our government laid siege to a city in.
And that is the wrong one. This is cut number 6, is what I was saying there. This is Josh Hawley, who is speaking before the Senate committee. And I think we have that.
Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs, they know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember
$1 million they're saying that he was soliciting. You just heard Senator Josh Hawley saying that you used federal employees to apply for awards. First of all, that's not appropriate. When you're a federal employee, you should not be getting any money. You shouldn't be using federal employees to help you get cash rewards. None of that is appropriate. Now, he didn't answer any questions, so we don't know, but that sure sounds absolutely horrible. And then here is Josh Hawley a little bit more saying you clearly had your priorities out of whack, Dr. Fauci. And again, he got the I know nothing, the Sergeant Schultz treatment.
You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the Fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body.
I would say that pretty well sums it up. I thought it was really horrible to watch Dr. Fauci there, who was our top health official at the time. Remember? The one that was causing so many schools to close. People couldn't go see their loved ones. 1 million Americans died. And the guy doesn't feel like he needs to answer anything. He's hiding behind the Fifth Amendment. And at this point, again, as you heard from legal experts, a lot of people are saying he cannot. When you have a full pardon, you have to testify. This is really shocking. And I really do believe it is just disgusting of Dr. Fauci to just sit there and think, okay, well, I'm not going to testify. And all these families that were so desperately impacted by his decisions. And now we find out from his diary, he was telling a very different story. His diary indicates that he was clearly aware of, obviously, the funding that he was a part of through this EcoHealth that then went to the Wuhan lab. His diary shows also he's well aware it probably didn't start in a wet market with a bunch of pangolins, some animal creatures none of us ever heard of. And also about, closing schools, convincing schools, publicly saying, oh, that wasn't my decision. It's up to each school district. And let's go to your calls, guys. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Sal in New Jersey. Go ahead, Sal, your thoughts tonight.
Rita, it was absolutely disgusting to see Anthony Fauci, the way he lied through his teeth. And it was also disgusting when I saw Andy Kim defend him. Did you see that? The senator from my own state.
Yes, I did. And in fact, Sal, after the break, I'll make sure I play that clip from Andy Kim because, yeah, he made it sound like he was like a George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Lincoln all combined, right? I mean, how offensive was that? After he sat there and wouldn't even give the American public, to me, it's not even an affront to Congress. It's an affront to the American people. Don't you agree, Sal?
Absolutely. And I would also like to say we also have to get hello?
Yeah. Go ahead, real quick.
We also have to get Alejandro Mayorkas to testify because he's also in cahoots with this garbage with the illegal immigration.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sal. You're right. Remember, he said, "Oh yeah, the border's secure," and he said that with a straight face.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Surf City, New Jersey, where an officer used a drone to save two swimmers who were in major distress as they were caught in a rip current. It's a pretty incredible story, and an officer received a call from county dispatch that there were two swimmers in distress in the area that he was in. So the officer deployed a drone that was equipped with a flotation device called the rest tube. It's a special device that can be deployed and it can move up to 45 miles an hour. The Ocean County Sheriff's Department said, we took it out, we turned it on. It has GPS coordinates and off they go. Once the drone flies up and is over the person, we remotely activate it, and it dropped the flotation device right next to the ones in distress. And they said what's powerful is once the flotation device was dropped to them, it immediately activated, it expanded in the water, and the individuals were then able to hold on to the tube. Then the officers rushed out to them and brought them ashore. Really amazing story. Now, the Sheriff's Department says that they are stationed in areas where many of these rescues happen, and these flotation devices are often an extra layer of protection. Really incredible that the drone was able to drop it out and saved these two individuals. One of the detectives said, "Words can't describe how important it is. It saves one's life. It is truly worth it." And bravo to them. Very neat to see the technology that is involved. Well, we've been talking about the Fauci hearings, and incredibly, even though he got a full pardon from Joe Biden for activities that he may have done as the top health director in this country during COVID, during the worst pandemic in modern history, 1 million people died in America, and think about the millions around the globe. And his advice was all over the place, but he was telling a very different story publicly, so it seems, than what was written in his diaries. And so today was supposed to be the day of accountability. And Fauci, who couldn't get enough of the media, remember in the height of it all, well, now today he basically was mum. Listen to Senator Bernie Moreno, because he said that he actually ran for Congress. He ran for the Senate because he was so appalled by what Fauci did years ago. Take a listen.
On my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends.
But it ends, and it ends at that moment. And here is Senator Rand Paul. He was the chair of the committee. Of course, he has been the guy, he and Ron Johnson have been the senators sort of leading the charge against Fauci and uncovering this information. It was Rand Paul, remember, who had that information on the diary that clearly showed a very different image than what he was saying publicly. So listen to what Rand Paul said today. He said, after today and the fact that you have the audacity to invoke the Fifth Amendment, again, 111 times, well, I guess we're going to have to hold you in contempt, and we'll have to hold a vote on that next week. Take a listen.
To ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Department of Energy that confirms during Anthony Fauci's tenure that Bill Gates was given Q security clearance from 2014 to 2021. Without objection, that will be entered into the record. I'd also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the contents of the folder of authorities provided to Dr. Fauci, including the pardon. Let's be clear today, what we've seen. I really did want to hear from Dr. Fauci. I wanted to hear perhaps an apology, perhaps some semblance of being sorry for what happened or that judgment errors were made. We didn't hear any of that. But he was subpoenaed here to testify, refused to answer any questions, even after being directed by the chair and being advised of the law requiring him to do so. He has cited a privilege that is unsupported because of his blanket pardon and because he waived the privilege by testifying at the start. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to comply with the law, limited to the period of your pardon. At any point between January 1st, 2014 and January 19th, 2025, did you destroy any federal record or tell anyone else to?
Under the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that you have a unlimited presidential pardon, what is your specific objection that you are making?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
My question was limited to the period of your pardon only. I find your objection unsupported and direct you to answer the question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Because you refuse to answer, citing a privilege that is unsupported because of your pardon, and after being denied to do so, this committee has scheduled a vote next week on a resolution certifying your contempt.
It's going to get interesting. Now, there could also be state charges coming, and apparently Florida is opening an investigation into that. Only DOJ could actually pursue criminal charges. So there could be some sort of charge of contempt, then there could be a referral to the DOJ, and then DOJ could technically find him in contempt. He could then have fines. He could have prison time. I think it's up to a year. The question is, where is this going? And maybe the fact that he got grilled and skewered and I'm not going to answer, maybe that's enough. It was definitely a big embarrassment. If he's lied under oath and if he is responsible in some shape or form, certainly it sounds like he didn't keep all the information open to the president of the United States. I remember talking to Peter Navarro, who was in charge of all the, remember all the masks and the gloves and everything that we were all loading up on, remember, during the White House time under Trump. And he said there was never a meeting where he heard Dr. Fauci say that he knew about gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. And not only did he know about it, he was the one who was approving it because he knew how dangerous it was. And so what, you farm it out to a totalitarian regime, a communist regime, and it just happens to be down the street from the wet market, and he wanted the world to believe it was the wet market as opposed to the Wuhan lab. And all the evidence now, even according to his own diary, suggests that he knew that it was probably man-made, that it wasn't a pangolin at the wet market who started on a date with a bat and then met a fly and then a zebra. That's what he wanted us to believe. It was this whole bunch of gobbledygook. And this wasn't just any sort of, quote, cover-up, if you will. This really goes well beyond. If indeed all these things are true, he's completely lying to Congress and he's lying to the American public and he won't even answer for it. And that, to me, is just such a disgrace. I got so angry looking at him today, all smug and smiley, and then the pictures of him up on the InStyle magazine and People magazine, remember, the sexiest man alive. And then he was writing in his diary at this time how much he was loving all the attention and how he had a chat with Julia Roberts on some sort of Zoom call and how he butt dialed by accident Barbra Streisand because they just all thought he was the greatest. And what Josh Hawley was saying about him maybe collecting money, having his staff apply for awards. Rand Paul also had another bombshell saying that there's evidence, I think, that it was an assistant. Sounds like somebody on his staff has been talking to the Senate committee and suggested that maybe he destroyed evidence. So if that's true, that's really bad too. And by the way, even with all that, he could still not be found guilty for destroying things or doing things if he said it under oath. If he was asked under oath, hey, did you destroy evidence during this time? And he says, yeah, I did. Technically, because it got that blanket pardon, if the pardon's upheld, unless they can prove it was an auto pen and Joe Biden had no clue about any of that. But if it looks like it's Joe Biden who did it, he could even say, yeah, I did. I destroyed evidence. I lied to everybody. I did this, as long as he's telling the truth now. You can't commit a new crime. That's what this coverage means, that you're covered for everything you did in the past during that time period, but you can't commit a new crime, which is why when the fact he took the fifth so many times today makes you wonder, what is he covering up now? And especially now that his diary's out, he is trying to be too cute by half. And it's very dangerous. So you got to hear this, because Sal brought it up from New Jersey before the break about Andy Kim, Senator Andy Kim, in the hearing, started invoking all these great presidents and saying, gosh, I guess if there was a Mount Rushmore that had a fifth head, Fauci would be the fifth head. Take a listen to this.
It's not an easy job, but it is because there is so much at stake in our country. But these public servants do it because they are in the arena. I just want to end by just reading a portion of this because I think it's important as we're thinking about how to be able to treat public servants through this country, to think through this. And in the words of Teddy Roosevelt saying, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strive valiantly, who errs but comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who who at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for your service, Dr. Fauci. I yield back.
Senator.
That is incredible. Is there anybody else out there who wants to throw up after hearing that one? 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Stan in Forest Hills on line 4. Go ahead, Stan.
I wanted to. I'm glad you played. I was going to ask you to play Mr. Kim. Did any other Democrats speak?
During the hearing, I believe there were others. I know there was some after. Senator Blumenthal, I believe, spoke, and then he spoke afterwards defending him, essentially calling him a great American hero.
You played Josh Hawley. I understand. And you played the was that? I wanted to hear other Democrats, but I just heard Kim and so on. Let me make this statement here. I'm not surprised by what has happened here. This was planned out years ago. They wanted to go after this guy and crucify this guy. I knew this was going to happen. I just didn't know how far they were going to go. But the harsh reality is, as far as I'm concerned...
Wait. You're saying crucify the guy. You talk like it was a setup against Fauci? Is that where you're going?
Look, Rita, let's get something straight here. He testified 6-7 times to these committees, okay? And he talked, and he told them exactly what was going on, okay? So now they want to crucify this guy. They want to put him to the wall, the Republicans, okay? As far as I'm concerned, I'm glad Joe Biden pardoned him. I'm glad he did it.
Stan, you have got to be kidding. Stan, that's disgraceful. The diary. How
many millions were lives saved by this guy? Don't give me this garbage.
Yeah, and
how many millions of lives were saved by this guy?
And potentially how many lives were lost by his policies?
Killed the damn thing.
By his policies.
What's wrong with you?
His policies separated people. He had the 6 feet. He said nursing homes don't go visit. And you're telling me, and he also, how dare he, if he knew, and his diaries suggest he knew that it wasn't in a wet market from a pangolin with an antelope and a zebra mating. He was trying to come up with all these bizarre theories. And now we find out from his own words, Stan, these are not someone else's words. These are his own words, that he was clearly given information and suggesting that indeed it was something that was made in a lab, that it was human to human, that it was a transmission. But he made it sound like but it was leaning towards that. And Stan, he was leaning. Stan, even he was leaning towards that. And these are his own words. I'm going to hold you over because hopefully you get a conscience in the break. 1-800-848-9222. Let's see what happens to Stan in the break.
It's the Rita Cosby Show. This is the Red Apple Entertainment Report on Red Apple Audio Networks.
This week in the Worldwide News Network's Artist Lounge, actress Emmy Rossum. You know her as Fiona from Shameless and those intense brother-sister scenes with Jeremy Allen White, who played Lip.
The old Fiona would have handled this.
What was I supposed to do? Now she's starring in and executive producing a new series for Hulu called Furious.
There are 3 victims we know of. Neighbors say they saw a woman.
Emmy plays an FBI agent chasing a female serial killer. She says female killers are harder to catch. I asked her why.
What does it take for a woman to kill and then kill multiple times? That kind of engine inside, that kind of drive and real focus and commitment to justice and vengeance.
Emmy also explained why playing a cold FBI agent was tough for her.
I am somebody who is deeply feeling at all time like the wind could blow and I will feel everything.
Furious is on Hulu right now. Cooper Lawrence, Entertainment News, Worldwide News Network, New York.
This is the Red Apple Entertainment Report on Red Apple Audio Networks. And now, it's Unpacking Travel. Here's Yana Dorillis.
This is your travel report celebrating 250 years of America. Freedom 250. New York City to the Hamptons, history meets high tide. Before it was the city that never sleeps, New York was America's very first capital. George Washington was sworn in as president right here in 1789. Spend a day tracing that history through Lower Manhattan and dine at hip restaurants and cafes. Then ride the elevator up to the Empire State Building, wander Central Park, or catch a Broadway show. When the city heat kicks in, do what the New Yorkers do. Head east to the Hamptons. Explore Southampton's to Montauk towns founded from 1640. Soak up the sun at their beaches, grab a lobster roll, and watch the sunset from Montauk Lighthouse. I'm Yana Dorillis for the Worldwide News Network.
This place has a pulse. You hear it in the canopy, feel it in the ground. Life, fully illuminated, engulfs you. From the birds singing in the treetops above to the tiniest insects in the soil below. You take a deep, cleansing breath, filling your lungs with the essence of the forest. Now, imagine it's all gone. Healthy, life-giving.
This is the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, let's see if Stan calls back. Maybe he's trying to locate that conscience because he was praising Anthony Fauci. And somehow Anthony Fauci left out telling the president and the American public, for that matter, about the funding for the EcoHealth Alliance, which was then funding the Wuhan lab, which was doing gain-of-function research, which was this very dangerous research that he knew very well about. Even Obama said it was dangerous to have done. And yet he was continuing to do it. And somehow he left that out. And it happens to be right down the street. And then he writes about how the transmission appears to be more human to human, not some animal in a wet market, that it could be engineered, that kind of technology. Also writes about the whole difference that, oh, no, I never put pressure on schools to close. And then meanwhile, in his own diary, he's telling Bill de Blasio, oh, I'm so glad I convinced Bill to shut the New York City school district down. So that man is so, in my opinion, responsible for so much damage to this country and so much misinformation and misleading, all to cover his own behind. And then he doesn't even have the dignity and the honor to testify today. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Eduardo in Tampa on line 4. Go ahead, Eduardo.
Yeah, good evening, Rita. Yeah, this is so great to see Dr. Fauci, because I was telling somebody earlier in the day today that not along with him, but people like Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, Lightfoot, Karen Bass, they should all join Dr. Fauci in a cell. This is ridiculous.
Now, why do you think they belong in the same league as him, in your mind?
Well, these are people who wanted to, you know how they say war profiteering? Well, these people were profiteering from science.
And how do you believe that? I mean, I believe, look, if he was trying to get, as Josh Hawley even said, $1 million in awards, and if you see him in his diary, he's bragging about all the covers and how he's sexiest man alive and all the attention he's getting. He seems much more obsessed with attention than getting out the facts to the American public. That's my opinion, Eduardo. Yours?
Prima donna, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, prima donna. And the fact that he could sit there today, Eduardo, that to me is really, really shocking. That he could sit there and say, oh, I take the fifth, no problem. I got a full pardon, essentially. I don't need to do this. Well, let's see if they're going to press it. Let's see if they can get the votes to hold him in contempt. And then let's see if they get a referral. They should force him to testify. The American public deserves to know.